The carrier's deck throbbed under my boots like the chest of a leviathan, a slab of steel adrift on a moonlit ocean. Floodlights carved sharp angles in the night, and in their glare my F-14 Tomcat crouched with folded wings, a hunting cat waiting. I paused at the ladder to hear the wind, the engines, and my heartbeat, because ritual mattered where mistakes cost lives. My RIO sat strapped in the back seat, a steady silhouette among instruments, moving with the economy of endless repetition. The brief was short and heavy. A Soviet TU-95 Bear neared our perimeter, and our orders were to intercept, identify, and escort. I ran my glove along the canopy frame like a rider strokes a horse before the gate, feeling the cold bite of metal. The cockpit met me like a second spine, with switches where my fingers expected them, and dials that glowed with patient light. When the canopy closed, the carrier's roar dimmed to pressure at the edge of hearing, and silence filled the cockpit. The throttles sat under my palms like promises, warm and alive, and the aircraft trembled with restrained anticipation. Across the deck, green wands cut patterns through haze while yellow jerseys turned chaos into choreography, and our nose rolled in. The bow pitched gently against a swell, the deck lights dipping, and the horizon tipped like the world inhaling before flight. My RIO's voice came cool and close in my helmet. "Checks green, AWG-9 warm," each word clicking into place like teeth in a lock. I advanced the throttles until the engines found that hungry whine that turns courage into something the body can obey. Steam fogged the canopy edge, the nose dipped on the shuttle, and the shooter's wand signaled, small and absolute. I set my jaw, felt the harness bite my shoulders, and gave the salute that offered ourselves to the machinery of flight. The release hit like a mythic kick, a violent shove that turned deck into sky and noise into a single clean line forward. For 3 pounding heartbeats we were arrow more than bird, streaking off the bow as the ship vanished into darkness. Then the wings caught, and the Tomcat's mass transformed into authority, the nose lifting with practiced defiance of gravity. The afterburners tore 2 bright rivers in the night, and the sea mirrored fire as we rose into thin, sharp air. I pulled power back, the Tomcat settling on its haunches like a predator regaining poise, the carrier shrinking behind. The AWG-9 radar swept green arcs across my scope, a patient heartbeat mapping darkness with mathematics and faith. My RIO tuned out clutter, stacking contacts and ghosts into neat trays, his hands moving like a pianist in the dark. Air traffic kept us clean from recoveries and tankers above, while the E-2 Hawkeye herded fighters like careful stars. We leveled at altitude where the wind sharpened and the cockpit warmth felt borrowed. The world reduced to breath and dials. "Bear probable at 200 miles, my RIO said, his words dry and exact, carved like figures in stone. I trimmed out, listening to turbine harmonies, letting the Tomcat stretch its shoulders and ease into cruising poise. The ocean below was unbroken black, older than nations, older than quarrels, making me feel small and necessary. The night smelled of electronics, oxygen, and vigilance, a recipe that produced a calm just this side of prayer. We took fuel from a tanker whose lights looked like a small constellation. The booms touch punctuation in an endless sentence. Far ahead, beyond eyes but within instruments, a 4-engined relic pushed intentions west with propellers that never tired. Distance shrank like a tide, the night's story becoming less hypothetical and more carved in bearing and range. We throttled back to shape intercept geometry, because arriving too fast feels like anger, and too slow feels like fear. "Range 150, my RIO said, his tone the sound of a pencil sketching lines only he could see. The sky glittered with stars, and the moon was a silver coin tossed on the ocean's dark table far below. I checked weapons though we weren't to use them, because readiness is respect for how quickly fate changes. The Tomcat rode sweet and solid, its variable wings thinking quietly, Gratitude owed to engineers who built ambition into bones. Stations active on the Bear, my RIO murmured. Cameras likely, maybe sniffing emissions. The word sniff too intimate. I pictured a Soviet crew in their noisy capsule, coffee cooling, eyes tired and professional under caps unknown to us. We were strangers in a ritual older than us, the choreography of approach and insistence. A duet above a volcano. Range 100, my RIO said, and I began to feel the Bear as pressure, a presence shaping the air. We dropped a few hundred feet for visual, the black water looming closer so the angle would be polite yet firm. The first glimpse was a shape refusing to be star or cloud, then propeller arcs stitching silver commas in darkness. The TU-95 grew like a moving mountain, long wings steady, skin painted with functionality that cared nothing for beauty. Its engines wrote a low hymn into our bones, the cockpit panels humming back in sympathy, joining an unwanted choir. I slid the Tomcat to its left quarter, not too near, not too far, a polite distance made of intent. Their fuselage windows glowed dim, and in one a face passed. Proof history is lived by people, not machines. We held formation while cameras worked. Radios listened and clocks ticked, each second a bead on a fragile string. Photography complete in 90 seconds, my RIO said, the number like a fragile bridge between cliffs of silence. The Bear stayed its course. No aggression, no greeting, civility in pretending not to see what can't be ignored. Its wake tugged our nose softly, and I corrected with a fingertip. Grace cheaper than fuel and worth more peace. The sea below slipped by without trace, and I thought of the carrier steaming like a city that never slept. Fleet in range soon, my RIO noted. Turn line approaching. An invisible crease pressed into the map with care. We weren't here to fight, but to be unignorable, to act as boundary-made flesh. Flesh backed by alloys. The Bear crew knew the line too, knew the cost of disrespect, drifting along it like gamblers counting cards. On guard frequency, a weather advisory came, its ordinariness steadying extraordinary tension like a hand on the shoulder. The bomber edged starboard, a motion subtle, and I mirrored without closing, leaving polite space between us. My RIO ticked off frames and angles, collecting enough for intelligence officers and their briefings back home. The moon striped the Bear's fuselage, revealing rivets and repairs by hands we'd never shake. A kinship unexpected. A camera rotated toward us with curiosity almost friendly, as though wanting to flash without daring. We flew together like ships in a narrow canal, the etiquette ancient, collision unthinkable, silence heavy. Turn line in 60 seconds, my RIO said. Hawkeye suggests anchor, and the word felt right for holding place. I edged closer and slightly ahead, our presence growing from suggestion into a full sentence of intent. The Bear's navigation lights blinked philosophy, and I imagined their crew weighing stubbornness against paperwork waiting at home. When they began a slow turn, it was like conceding a chair without admitting another needed it. Graceful reluctance. The Intercept geometry relaxed, tension easing like a fist opening under a tablecloth, and the fleet's circle widened again. We held through the turn, our cameras finishing while fuel clocks cut closer, each minute a careful subtraction. Bingo -15, my RIO warned, leaving space for bravery but not for foolishness, a thin dividing wall. The Bear steadied on a new heading away from our fleet, and the ocean exhaled after holding breath politely. I gave a small wing waggle, half farewell, half warning, and maybe saw the faintest echo in return. We slid outward to escort distance, guardians at the edge of a neighborhood buying quiet with vigilance. Then weather appeared without warning, clouds swelling like a bruise, threatening to turn geometry into guesswork. Tendrils wrapped around our nose and their tail, softening edges until we were silhouettes listening harder than seeing. Rain streaked the canopy in silver lines, the Tomcat sitting heavier, as though the sky pressed its head. My RIO's radar blurred with clutter, his hands subtracting ghosts to leave loyal truths behind. The bear held its line like a barge on a river, and I admired that even as I disliked trusting etiquette. We edged lower for clearer silhouette, careful not to look theatrical or spook our own reflection. Lightning flickered distant to port, like flashbulbs in a dark stadium. Photographers of gods catching human nerves. Storm winds pulsed against us, and the Tomcat adjusted itself, a partner knowing my balance better than I. We broke into clean air again, the moon higher, the sea smooth, the bear gleaming like a polished rail. "Fuel it, Joker," my RIO said, numbers asking for adult choices even if the child in me wanted more. Hawkeye passed us to the next section like a baton in a relay, voices calm with practiced routine. Another pair of Tomcats appeared on scope, small commas promising to become sentences beside the bear. We shadowed a bit longer, sliding to the far side so the handoff looked like continuity, not surprise. The relief section called visual, their voices casual, making extraordinary duty sound like errands at home. The bear droned on, indifferent to our choreography, and I wondered if they tallied each flight on a wall. We peeled off with a roomy turn, leaving conversation before it became argument, horizon opening wide again. The tanker's lights glowed ahead like porch bulbs, and refueling happened with the intimacy of sharing breath. Fuel numbers steadied us, the jet lighter in spirit if not in weight, cockpit air tasting of relief. The ship answered our call with a voice both bureaucratic and homelike, clearing us for recovery as routine. On downwind, the carrier's wake shone silver, sewing the sea back together like a zipper trailing behind. The ball glowed on approach, a small truth in amber, and I rode it like threading a needle on a moving truck. Crosswind teased the nose. The deck rose a touch, the sea playing mischief, and I corrected with fingertip grace. The hook caught wire with a stomp, the Tomcat's roar collapsing into a growl as steel dragged us home. We rolled clear, wings folding like feathers after a dive, deck crew swarming with cheerful, relentless efficiency. When the canopy cracked, ocean air rushed in with coffee, hot metal, and fatigue earned by duty done. My RIO unstrapped stiffly, nodding in a way that meant both well flown and luck was with us. In debrief we spoke clipped, ranges, altitudes, times, while unspoken parts sat silent like dogs under the table. Outside, the Tomcat cooled with metallic pings, heat leaving like a guest slipping out without asking for more. Somewhere over the sea, the Soviet bomber droned on, the line between us shifting and returning, unwritten in speeches. I laid my palm on the Tomcat's warm skin before going below, grateful the night had given us a story without fire.